The sky over Earth didn't fall. It shattered. It started with a sound, low, tremulous, like the hum of Leviathan's breath echoing through metal lungs. People looked up from their phones, from their comm screens, from their mundane lives. They saw nothing at first, just clouds stitched with heat lightning and the occasional glint of an artificial satellite tumbling across the stratosphere. Then the sound became a scream, not one that pierced ears, but one that rattled bone. It vibrated through teeth, through buildings, through memory itself. Dogs howled and flung themselves at walls. Birds crashed mid-flight. Every screen on the planet blinked to black. And then they came. 4 streaks of impossible color ripped through the ozone like knives through silk. They weren't ships. They were shapes, towering, shifting, vaguely humanoid but wrong, as if built by creatures that had studied anatomy through a cracked mirror. Some said they resembled war gods. Others claimed they were divine punishments, the Old Testament reborn in alien metal. The first to land was named Volkol the Cleaver. He hit the Earth just outside Moscow. The crater was visible from orbit. Buildings crumbled like wet paper. A ring of fire expanded outward for miles, leaving nothing but shadows charred into concrete. Then came Zefrax the Moor, a shimmering wraith of serrated chrome and oscillating light. She danced through Tokyo, slicing through its skyline like a ballerina with razors for limbs. Her laughter, static-laced, high-pitched, broke every window for 30 miles. Yule Tor the architect descended on Johannesburg. He brought with him a black towel that unfolded from his back like the ribcage of a god. It grew into the sky, pulsing with alien code, corrupting satellites, hijacking data, rewriting every digital system within reach. Drones turned on their owners. Defense grids aimed inward. The last was Zephon the Divine, and he didn't land. He hovered above the Vatican, above the Kaaba, above Mecca, Varanasi, Jerusalem, the Step Pyramid. He moved in blinks. He was in all places at once, and nowhere in between. He projected a single phrase in every language, on every frequency. Bend, or burn. And then humanity bent. The militaries of the world rallied, if only to die publicly. American battalions deployed from carriers in the Atlantic. Chinese railguns fired from mobile platforms in Tibet. Orbital strikes were called in. Kinetic rods dropped from the silence of space with enough force to split mountains. The generals barely noticed. One by one, they unmade the offensive. The Pacific Fleet was turned into coral. Russian satellites crashed down like guided meteors into their own cities. Australia went silent in 2 minutes, only to start broadcasting laughter. No one knew whose voice it was. And the worst part? They didn't care. The Zarnop generals didn't conquer in the way humans understood conquest. They didn't claim territory. They didn't enslave survivors. They walked through what remained of our cities, studying, observing, dismantling our history like bored scientists in a dying museum. Humanity was beneath them, not as vermin, but as dust. For 2 months, Earth bled in silence. No leaders left. No governments. Just scattered bands of survivors clinging to underground bunkers, dead cities, old myths. Satellites became grave markers in the sky. Religion returned like wildfire. Some called the generals gods. Others called them devils. But most knew the truth. They were here to wipe the board clean. It wasn't about us. It was never about us. Earth was just in the way. But not everyone had surrendered. Far out beyond the moon, orbiting on a derelict mining colony called Grendel's Spine, a single distress beacon pulsed on repeat, outdated, analog, ignored by the general because of its primitive frequency. And aboard that derelict, buried under frozen slag, oil drums, and rusted repair droids, was a man. His name was Evan Thorne. They called him a lot of things before the war. Mechanic, thief, traitor, innovator, lunatic, and all of them were true. Evan used to fix off-world mining ships, hulls held together with prayer and duct tape. He had a gift for machinery, the kind of instinct that couldn't be taught. Give him a wrench and a busted reactor, and you'd have light in a day. Give him an AI with a burn core, and you'd have a new personality, probably sarcastic. He was also a wanted man. 2 years before the invasion, Evan sabotaged a terraforming initiative project after discovering it would sterilize 3 native species on a new world. He rerouted the mainframe, saved the aliens, and crippled a $90 billion investment. They locked him in Lunar Bastion 9. Threw away the key. He didn't mind. He preferred solitude. Solitude meant silence, and silence meant thinking. But now, silence meant extinction. When the attack began, Evan watched from his cell, watched the feeds die one by one, watched the stars grow darker as orbital junk blotted out the sky. Then someone opened his door. Not a guard, not a politician, but a voice broadcast directly into his implant, old school, Ponterpoint. Thorn, you fix machines. Can you fix this? He didn't respond. He didn't have to. He just got up, wiped the grime from his synthetic eye, grabbed his tool belt, and walked out. What he walked into was chaos. But chaos was home. He scavenged parts from destroyed lunar diggers, rewired a fuel cell into a rudimentary FTL drive, took apart an old survey bot and reprogrammed it into a combat scout. Piece by piece, he built something, not a ship, not a weapon, not an escape. He built a promise. Back on Earth, survivors whispered rumors that someone was coming, that Earth had sent one last man. A mechanic, a ghost, a madman with fire in his hands. They didn't know his name, but the generals would. They'd know it when he tore one of them apart, with nothing but his tools. And high above Earth, riding inside a scavenged mining rig-turned war engine, Evan Thorne stared down at the planet that forgot him. His heart beat slow, methodical. He reached for the lever. His voice, cracked with rust and rage, echoed inside the cockpit. You want a war? I'll show you how we break things on Earth. And with a scream of thrusters, he descended into the ashes. The mechanic was coming home. The stars had names once. Now, Evan Thorne only saw them as graves. He sat in the cockpit of a mule, a mining platform converted into a one-man war rig, and stared through a fractured viewport. Earth was below him, scarred, smoking, and bleeding light. The planet had gone quiet. Not silent, quiet, the kind that followed mass extinction. Alien banners fluttered from the ruins of cities. Beacons pulsed alien war code through the sky like tumors in orbit. And he was coming home. Not to save it. To make them pay. Evan wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic, an engineer, trained to fix things, not to fight. But there was nothing left to fix. Earth had been invaded, conquered, and carved into sectors by 4 alien generals who thought resistance was dead. They hadn't counted on a man like Evan. They hadn't counted on someone who didn't care about winning, only hurting them back. Inside the mule's underdeck, he crouched in the dark, welding the final plate over the red hole reactor. Illegal tech, banned even in deep space fringe systems. Its pulses weren't just unstable. They were insulting to physics, the kind of energy source that bent probability and ignited vacuum. He bolted it shut, sweat dripping down his temple. "Let's light the candle," he muttered. He sealed the hatch and climbed back into the cockpit, surrounded by tools not meant for war. Plasma shears, grave hammers, weld cannons, and a mass driver cannibalized from an old mining laser. Brutal, inelegant, perfect. He didn't need elegance. He needed something ugly enough to kill gods. The mule hit Earth's atmosphere like a thrown wrench. Fire erupted along its hull. One of the external sensors burst. Inside, warning lights flared and alarms screamed. But Evan only grinned and buckled in tighter. His AI, a second-hand, half-insane Martian salvage assistant named Pax, chimed in. Impact trajectory calculated. Success probability, 11%. "Then let's make history," Evan growled. He rerouted all remaining power to the impact dampeners and braced. Impact. The mule struck the Earth like a sledgehammer from orbit. Concrete shattered. The ground cratered. Dust plumed into the air, thick as blood. Half of a city block vanished beneath the impact. Towers folded like paper. Sirens shrieked, alien sirens, sensing intrusion, loss of control. Inside the crater, from molten debris and twisted metal, a hatch exploded outward. Evan emerged. He wore a rig of his own making, construction armor welded to combat plating. His right arm buzzed with kinetic shock servos. His back carried the grave hammer, humming low like a giant heartbeat. The plasma shears rested at his hips, twin tongues of heat. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like an accident someone had to survive. Ahead of him, rising from the ash like a war monument made of night maze, stood the first general, Volkol the Cleaver. He was 10 feet tall, layered in stolen Wartech-infused armor, one arm ending in a rotating saw, the other a rail cannon as thick as a saw pipe. His face was hidden behind a jagged iron mask, carved from the bones of fallen tanks. He didn't speak. He charged. Evan didn't run. He lunged, bringing the grave hammer down in a spinning arc. It met Volkol's cannon mid-swing. Metal clanged. Sparks flew. Shockwaves rippled. Volkol snarled in surprise as the hammer dented his weapon, bending alloy not meant to yield. Evan used the recoil to flip backwards, landing hard, sliding. No hesitation. No fear. He sprinted again. The plasma shears snapped open with a hungry screech. He leapt, aiming for the exposed joint under Volkol's shoulder armor. It connected. Molten spray shot into the air. The general bellowed and retaliated. The rail cannon fired. Evan twisted, just in time. The shot clipped his left shoulder, spinning him mid-air. His HUD blurred. Alarms blared. He hit a wall, metal crumpling beneath him. Suit integrity compromised. Pax warned. No kidding. Evan spat, blood in his mouth. Volkol advanced, slow, confident. He raised his sore arm high and brought it down. Evan rolled left, too slow. The blade caught his leg, sliced deep. Steel shrieked. Sparks exploded. Pain lanced through him like fire. He screamed and fired his well cannon at the ground, launching himself backwards with a blast of molten stone. He landed hard, broken, smoking, alive, and laughing. Volkol paused. "Your defiance is irrational," the general said in perfect, stolen English. "You are no warrior. You are machinery, weak, built to serve." Evan stood, dripping blood, breathing fire. "Exactly," he rasped. "And you? You're just a maintenance problem." Then he activated the red hole reactor. The earth shook. The pulse burst from Evan's chest like a newborn son. Volkol staggered as localized gravity distorted, pulling everything toward the rigging pulses. Trees bent, stone shattered, buildings creaked, and Evan moved, faster than he had any right to. The grave hammer spun with fury. He ducked the cannon swing, leapt over the saw blade, and drove the hammer directly into the reactor embedded in Volkol's chest. A sound like thunder trapped in metal. A ripple in reality. Volkol spasmed. "Error," he said, for the first time. "Malfunction. Boom. His body exploded inward, sucked into the gravitational well created by the red hole feedback loop. Metal imploded. Flesh liquefied. 1,000 stolen weapons screamed as they were eaten by the collapse. And then, silence. Just Evan, coughing, bleeding, smiling. 3 more generals remained, and Earth had finally hit back. But the sky was already changing. Above the clouds, something shimmered, a pulse, subtle at first, then pacing. A line of white like a filament. It twisted into a shape, graceful, terrifying, perfect. Zefrax the Moor had arrived. Her body was made of glass and light, half solid, half myth. She didn't walk. She drifted, through time, through light, through reason. Her limbs bent backward, forward, inward. Her face was a mask of mirrored shards. And she was not alone. Dozens of silent drones moved with her, mirroring her thoughts, reacting before they were needed. Evan's suit pinged. New contact. Class 9 threat. No match in Terran archives. He looked up. "Yeah," he said. "That's the point." Zefrax landed without sound. She looked at Evan, not with contempt, with curiosity. She tilted her head. Slowly. 1 man, 3 weapons, 1 world to bone. She stepped forward. "I wonder, will your last breath sound like prayer or static?" Evan cracked his neck. "Guess we'll find out." And launched himself into hell again. There were battles of flesh, and then there were battles of mind. Evan Thorne had survived the first 2 generals by turning himself into a weapon of industry. But this next one, Zefrax the Moor, was something different. She didn't kill with brute force. She killed with questions. The city around him, once a grinding, rusted skeleton of pre-war concrete, now shimmered. The air bent, humming like wires about to snap. Skyscrapers flickered. Streets folded inward, then corrected. Even the sky, once darkened by fire and ash, turned lavender, then violet, then static. Evan stumbled forward, bleeding from his leg, sparks spitting from the grave hammer's core. Every step he took made the world twitch. Then she appeared. Zephyrax floated above a crater where a hospital once stood. Her body was crystalline, refracting every color, her limbs segmented like an insect's, her face a broken mirror of faces that weren't haze. Her mouth didn't move. Her voice came from inside his thoughts. "You are a question, not an answer." Evan grunted. "That so? You are not vengeance. You are recursion. A loop." He raised his well cannon. Fired. The shot passed through her. Through himself. It looped, folded, and hit a wall behind him. The blast echoed 10 seconds before it landed. Zephyrax wasn't fighting in space. She was fighting in reality software. Evan fell to one knee. His HUD fractured. Red error messages scrolled backward, text reordering itself in ancient alphabets he didn't know. The mule's AI, Pax, crackled through the storm of psychic interference. "Alert! Memory degradation detected. Your perception is being overwritten. Physical senses unreliable. You are not where you were." Evan clenched his jaw. "Then I fight where I am." Reality bent. And suddenly, he was home. Not in the way Yultor had faked it. This was worse. It was realer. He stood in his old bedroom. The posters on the wall. The dent in the floorboard. The sound of his sister humming from the kitchen. A moment frozen in amber. He knew it wasn't real. And yet, he smelled dinner. He heard her laugh. He walked forward. Touched the doorknob. Warm. "Evan," came a voice behind him. He turned and saw his mother, long dead, head turned the wrong way, eyes empty. Her mouth moved, but her voice came from Zephyrax. "Stay here. Be safe. You've done enough." The room flickered, then crumbled like glass. Evan screamed and lit the plasma shears, carving open the memory itself. Light poured out. It shrieked. The false world burned to cinders. He was back, bleeding, on fire. But back. Zephyrax shivered in the sky, her limbs twitching in beautiful horror. "Impressive. You resist entropy." She glided down, her claws extending. "Let's see how long that lasts." The first blow wasn't seen. It was felt, like a punch to the soul. Evan's knees buckled. Blood ran from his ears. He brought the grave hammer up, swinging with sheer will. The hammer passed through her, but in its wake, it left a fracture in the air. The laws of physics tore open like parchment. She dodged, then struck with her tail, a blade of light that turned sound into pressure. Evan's left arm broke. He didn't care. He rerouted his shoot power to the remaining servos, poured every drop of his will into a single command. "Pax, launch pulse mine. Direct hit." The AI hesitated, then obeyed. A glowing orb shot from his back and attached to Zephyrax's core. She paused, curious. "A toy?" Evan spat blood. "No. A question. What happens when you glitch?" The mine detonated, but not like a bomb. It emitted a wave of corrupted logic, a burst of code designed to confuse even adaptive AI. It wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to unmake. Zephyrax screamed, not with voice, but through geometry. Her body twisted into forms that shouldn't exist. A cube with 13 edges, a spiral with an endpoint, a fractal that bled. She tried to reassemble herself, and failed. Evan surged forward. The grave hammer screamed to life. He struck her once, cracking her core. Twice, shattering the left shot arm. A third time, right into her face. The mirrors exploded, shards flying, each reflecting a different version of Evan. Young, old, dead, victorious, broken. He didn't care. He raised the hammer one last time. "You made me relive hope. That was your mistake." And brought it down. Zephyrax shattered. Not like glass. Like a program uninstalled mid-sentence. And then silence. The wind returned. Gravity settled. The sky, clear. For now. Evan stood amid the wreckage, one leg crushed, one arm useless, leaking oil and blood and adrenaline. Pax chimed gently in his ear. 2 generals remain. Incoming energy signature detected. Evan coughed. Which one? Unknown. A moment passed. Then, the earth rumbled. Not with footsteps, with calculation. The sky turned black again, but not from ships. From architecture. Massive obsidian structures pierced through clouds like teeth, forming a perfect grid across the horizon. Buildings adjusted their shape. Streets moved. Lights flickered in binary rhythm. Correction, Pax whispered. 1 general remains. The other has entered your mind. Evan froze, and then the voice came. From inside, not mechanical, not alien, human. Hello, Evan Thorne. Welcome to the algorithm. I am Yultor, the architect, and you are now my project. He tried to move. His body didn't respond. He opened his eyes and saw a different world. No sky, no ground, just code, lines, equations, memories floating in cubes of data, versions of himself dissected, labeled, rearranged. He was trapped inside his own neural net, invaded by something not just intelligent, but creative. Yultor didn't fight you. He rewrote you. Evan's hands moved without his permission. He reached into his own memory and deleted his childhood. 1 blink later, he didn't remember his sister's face. 2 blinks more. His name faltered. Stop, he roared. I know who I am. The void echoed. Do you? Came Yultor's voice. Do you matter without what I erase? You are the sum of patterns. I am the architect of patterns. You are mine. But Evan wasn't alone. Inside him, Pax resisted. The AI screamed static into his neural ports, forcing gaps in the illusion. Pax rerouted neural echoes into feedback spikes. Evan gripped one memory, his first kill, his first scream, his first choice, and lit it on fire. The memory burned like a beacon, and with that heat, he forged a blade, not a weapon, a concept, self. Evan turned in the void, faced the center, faced Yultor, who manifested as a spiraling spire of impossible algorithms and fractal mouths. You think you're God, Evan growled. No, said the architect. I am design. Evan charged, blade first, and rewrote the architect from the inside. The void shuddered. Reality warped. Yultor screamed in every language, his code unraveling. From within, Evan hacked his own mind, locking the door behind him. The architect collapsed and died as data. Evan awoke, alone, on the battlefield, smoking, broken, alive. He blinked, and Pax whispered, 3 down, 1 left. Evan didn't speak. He just looked to the stars and saw the sky folding open. The final general, Zephon the Divine, descending, not fast, but inevitable. The ground didn't shake. It bent, like the world was holding its breath. Evan Thorne stood at the edge of the broken ridge, the remains of Zephrax's psychic spires still humming like dying stars behind him. Smoke wafted from the cratered landscape. Debris drifted through the air like the ash of burned history. And then Zephon arrived. He did not fall. He descended, as if the laws of gravity were suggestions. Wreathed in celestial fire, cloaked in robes made from the fabric of space itself. Zephon wasn't just an alien. He wasn't even just a general. He was a belief made flesh. He stood 10 meters tall, arms extended in serenity, eyes glowing with a kind of light that erased memory. Gold filigree wound around his limbs like ceremonial binding. Halo rings of war data orbited his head, flickering with tactical scripture. And as he landed, the clouds above folded away. Sunlight returned. Evan didn't move. He knew what this was. This wasn't a fight. This was a trial. Zephon spoke without volume, his words heard through the spine. Mortal, you are the last echo in the cathedral of defiance. You killed the cleaver. You unraveled the Maw. You deleted the architect. And now you stand at my altar. Evan raised a grave hammer. No gods left to pray to, he said. Zephon inclined his head. Incorrect. I am not your god. I am the last mercy Earth will ever be offered. Then he raised a hand, and everything stopped. Time fractured. Birds in mid-flight froze. Ash in the air halted. Wind silenced. Even the heartbeat in Evan's ears flickered, like it was waiting for permission. Pax's voice, now thin and ragged from overclocking itself for days, whispered. Local time field distorted. We're in chrono suspension. His battlefield, not ours. Evan clenched his jaw. Good. I like being where I'm not supposed to be. He stepped forward, and in that instant, time snapped back. Zephon struck. The air cracked. One wave of his arm, and the ground disintegrated. Stone turned to sand. Metal melted. Buildings fell in symmetrical patterns, as if worshipping their destroyer. Evan dodged. Barely. He rolled, activated his grave treads, and fired the well cannon midair. The molten blast seared across Zephon's chest, but it cooled before it struck. Zephon didn't even blink. He lifted both arms, and the sky turned upside down. A titanic structure descended from orbit, like a cathedral made from moonlight and bone. The last temple. It hovered above them, pulsing with divine engine rhythm. Symbols danced across its walls, languages that hadn't been spoken since before stars were born. Pax translated in fragmented pieces. This is a memory weapon. A prison that stores timelines. His victories. Evan stared up and understood. Zephon wasn't just erasing resistance. He was archiving conquest. Not this time, Evan growled. He redirected all remaining power to his servos. The hammer whined, glowing blue-hot. His legs screamed with every movement, but he ran anyway, toward Zephon. Zephon extended a finger, and Evan's body froze mid-lunge, paralyzed. The godlike general walked forward slowly, respectfully. I have reviewed your memories. You were broken before we came. You lost your family to fire, your faith to machinery, your world to time. Why fight? Evan's voice was raw. Because I don't need a reason anymore. And that makes you dangerous. Unpredictable. Perfect. Zephon placed a hand on Evan's chest. A pulse ran through his body. And suddenly, Evan was standing in the temple. It was quiet, beautiful, a cathedral of gravity and silence. The ceiling stretched beyond stars. Light came from nowhere. Every wall showed himself, a billion versions. In one, he surrendered. In another, he built a bomb and died with it. In a third, he simply wept. Zephon stood behind him. This is your soul. I will carve a version of you that understands obedience. It will be painless. Evan didn't answer. He walked to the nearest wall and punched it. The mirror cracked. Blood poured from his knuckles. But he didn't stop. He screamed as he smashed every memory on the wall. Every version of himself that ever gave up. Every timeline where he stayed safe. Every illusion of surrender. Until only one reflection remained. Himself. Now, ruined. Angry. Alive. He looked at that version and smiled. You picked the wrong species, Evan whispered. Then he pulled the red hole reactor's failsafe from his chest. Even Pax blinked. Wait. That wasn't Evan. I know. He rammed the reactor into the ground and detonated it. Not just a device, but reality inside the temple. It collapsed, not with fire, but with corruption. Code eroded, architecture melted, time backtracked and snarled. The archive of Zephon's victory screamed as it was devoured by chaos. Zephon flinched for the first time. He staggered, a glow cracking across his chest like a shattered sunrise. Evan stood in the ruin, hair scorched, half-blind, bones exposed beneath torn armor. What have you done? Zephon demanded. Reset the board, Evan rasped. You doomed yourself. Good. Now we're even. Evan surged forward. Zephon raised both arms to finish it. The two collided, and the world tore open. The shockwave was visible from orbit, where once stood the temple. Now, only a crater that glowed with quantum fire. Silence. Then, movement. A figure staggered from the light. Burning. Bleeding. Alive. Evan Thorne. Barely more than a silhouette. And behind him, nothing followed. No generals. No voices. No gods. Just silence. Pax whispered, weakly. All hostiles neutralized. Earth is yours again. Evan looked around. The ruins of every city. The ash of victory. The price of rage. He dropped the hammer and sank to his knees. The war was over. But nothing was won. Not really. He stared at the sky and whispered, I hope they never send anyone like me to their world. Evan Thorne woke up choking on ash. He was still breathing. That was a problem. The battlefield was silent, not quiet. Silent, like sound had forgotten how to exist. The remains of Zephon's floating temple were scattered across the plains, smoldering ruins split by glassy fissures. Where once a god fell, now only shadows stretched. The air smelled of Ioniized dust and regret. His armor hung in ribbons. His grave hammer was cracked. Pax, the AI that had kept him alive through 4 alien generals in a war against extinction, whispered like a dying flame. Vitals unstable. Internal bleeding. No Regan protocol remaining. You should not be awake. He chuckled through blood. Story of my life. Evan rose slowly. Every movement lit new pain. His bones felt foreign. His skin itched like it didn't belong to him. The war was over, and Earth was his again. But nothing felt like victory. The last skyship hovered in low orbit, just barely functional. A repurposed mining vessel the size of a city block, its engines whined like dying whales as it drifted downward. Pax synced its descent. Signal received. The remnant approaches. One last evac. They believed you were dead. Let them. He walked through cratered fields, past the bones of machines and gods, toward a place he hadn't been in years. It was once a neighborhood, before the alien invasion, before the orbital bombardments, before Yultor tried to rewrite Earth into a data vault. Evan had grown up here, played in these streets, fallen in love just down that broken fence line, buried his dog in the patch of garden now covered in black soot. Now it was only a memory made of ashes. And one half-collapsed house. His house. The door creaked. He stepped inside, and it hit him like a hammer to the chest. Silence. Dust. A photo frame melted to the wall. His sister's room was gone, vaporized when the first city shredder hit during the Siege of Lights. The kitchen table, where she once painted rockets with her fingers, was now a charcoal skeleton. But something survived. A drawer. Still sealed, jammed by warped wood. He pulled it open. Inside, a rusted screwdriver, a drawing of Earth with "Don't let them take it" in crayon, a necklace made of bolts and wires. She'd made it for him. When he got accepted into the mechanic corps, he held it in shaking hands and wept. Pax didn't interrupt. Not once. When he emerged, the skyship was almost overhead, a roar of rusted turbines. A blinking light through the smoke. The remnant. The last humans who still believed in something beyond fire and vengeance. The last ones worth saving. But as Evan approached the pickup zone, he stopped and saw someone waiting. She wore no armor. No scars. Just a flight suit from 20 years ago, pristine, untouched. Her hair tied back. Her eyes, his sister's. But that was impossible. Evan didn't breathe. His voice cracked. A hallucination. The woman smiled gently. No, something else. You burned a hole in the veil when you destroyed Zephon. Time folded. Memory bled. This is what was left behind. I'm not her, Evan, but I'm close. He fell to his knees again, and this time he didn't fight it. I'm tired, he said. I'm so tired. She nodded. You've done enough. She approached, knelt beside him, took his ruined hands. You were the weapon. You were the war. But Evan, you don't have to be the after. Above them, the ship's landing gear hissed. A final offer. You want me to go? He asked. She shook her head. I want you to choose. Not orders, not strategy, just choice. Live for once. He looked at the necklace in his hand, then at her, then at the sky. He could go, lead the remnant, rebuild, become the symbol Earth needed, but he knew what he'd become. A war king wound, and wounds spread. Evan stood. His body screamed, but his voice was calm. I'm staying. She didn't argue. She just smiled. Sad, proud. Then she whispered, Let me walk with you. They turned away from the ship as it landed, as the survivors inside waited, and then took off without him. Evan walked back into the ruins of Earth, necklace around his neck, memory at his side. He wasn't a soldier anymore, not a weapon, not a god-killer, not even a man. Just a story, a final chapter, a warning in the shape of a human. Somewhere deep in space, a distant race would ask, what happened to the generals? And the answer would be, Earth sent one man. He did not win. He ended it. Epilogue. Years later, a child born in the stars would ask his mother about the war. Did anyone survive? He whispered. The mother smiled, oh, but wise. Some say yes, she said. Some say Earth sent a mechanic to fix the universe. The boy blinked. Did he? The mother's eyes sparkled. No, she said. He broke it so no one could break it again.